Good May the 4th to you, and welcome to the second edition of Charts with Dan here on my personal YouTube channel. Thank you so much for joining me today. As always, there's not a whole lot of box office to go over, but I've got some other facts and figures to go over, and I want to break down the AMC versus Universal feud that's ongoing. A lot of it was unraveling last week. A little more information came out over the weekend, so I'm excited to break that down and show you just exactly what is at stake in this clash between two multi-billion-dollar corporations. But first, let's look at what there is of the box office for this past weekend. Now, these are the films that have reported their numbers. A couple of other movies may trickle in over the next couple days because, as I mentioned last week, the major studios are not reporting any numbers whatsoever. These are all smaller studios that are giving facts and figures for the box office. So yes, there are major studio films that are playing at drive-ins, at theaters that can play movies right now, but the studios are not reporting those numbers. All of these films are actually from IFC. They reported that the number one film of the weekend is a horror film called The Wretched. It is the number one movie in America, reportedly playing exclusively at the dozen or so drive-in theaters around the country that are open. It's about a young boy facing off with the witch next door, also available on VOD. $65,000 will be what gets you the number one spot nowadays. That's your number one movie. At number two, a holdover from last week, True History of the Kelly Gang. Its theater count dropped from 5 to 2, and I was actually able to find the two theaters that's playing the True History of the Kelly Gang this past weekend. As I mentioned on last week's show, the Ocala Drive-In in Ocala, Florida, now the movie-going mecca for people that want to see things on the big screen, and the Mission Tiki Drive-In right here outside of Los Angeles also played True History of the Kelly Gang. I actually read that crew members from the film The Wretched gathered at the Mission Tiki to have a kind of impromptu premiere party because the movie played there as well, and that's the only place where they could really join together and see their film put on the big screen. Just one of the many ways that people are improvising and finding ways to enjoy film when and where they can as this crisis continues. At number 3 is a film called Disappearance at Clifton Hill. This was playing at one drive-in in Sacramento and another one in Glendale, Arizona, according to the information that I could find. And then a film called The Other Lamb comes in fourth, playing at one theater nationwide. Now, again, as I mentioned, there may be a few other movies that trickle in as the week goes on, but that's your top 4 for the box office this weekend, all playing at drive-in theaters that are able to legally be open. Also all available on VOD, so I'm sure that there are VOD numbers that came in, and we're going to be talking a lot about VOD later on in the show. Now, this was the first weekend in May, and traditionally, at least for the last several years, it is the kickoff of the summer movie season. Now, unfortunately, that's not been the case. This was going to be the launch of Black Widow, the latest film in the MCU. That is not happening until later this year, we hope. But I wanted to look back and see historically at the kind of box office that this weekend has generated. So here are the top 5 opening weekends for the first weekend in May. As you can see, the number one film, The Avengers, back in 2012. Hard to believe that was 8 years ago, almost a decade ago, that The Avengers opened at number 1, the biggest opening weekend to that point ever at the history of the box office. And Marvel is really dominating this. You see Avengers there at number 1, Avengers Age of Ultron at number 2, Captain America Civil War at number 3, followed by Iron Man 3, and then a Marvel hero in that 5th slot, Spider-Man 3, opening and taking up the 5th spot. Now, when you adjust for inflation, which, as you know, of course I did, those are the same 5 films, Spider-Man and Iron Man 3 flip-flop, so that becomes 4 and 5, but those are the same 5 movies. So, as we are adjusting to the new normal, now it looks like there are some places that are beginning to open here in the United States. Of course, movie theaters is very far down that list for health and safety reasons. So even though businesses are starting to open, it does not look like movie theaters are going to be opening anytime soon. Again, the industry itself is not expecting an opening until at least July, where Tenet still remains on the schedule. We'll see if it can make that opening weekend. But yeah, a marked difference between even last year when the second weekend of Avengers Endgame was setting records for May, for second weekends in May, and you name it. Now, almost no business at the box office. So what are people watching? Well, I wanted to look at a couple lists just to see. I'm curious what people are deciding to watch. Now, these are domestic U.S. numbers, these next couple things I'll give you. But first of all, let's look at what people are watching on Netflix. That's where a lot of people turn to watch movies while they're in their house, while they're at their shelter-at-home orders. And the number one movie today, this is as of today, is a movie called Dangerous Lies, which stars Riverdale's Camila Mendez. All Day and a Night is the number 2 film on Netflix. This is from Black Panther writer Joe Robert Cole and stars Moonlight's Ashton Sanders. Extraction is number 3, and I was reading a very interesting article, and you're never going to believe this. Netflix says that Extraction is, shocker, their biggest movie debut of all time. This is unprecedented that the latest thing from Netflix is the biggest thing that they've ever done. Listen, Netflix, they are the masters of numbers and the masters of spinning things. It is amazing to me that everything they release is the biggest everything of anything that they've ever done. They control their own numbers. They can do what they want with them. I'm sure a lot of people are at home and watching Extraction. It's certainly a convenient option for a lot of people. But add yet another film or TV show or streaming event that is the best / most popular thing that Netflix has ever done. Looking at the rest of the list, Den of Thieves is at number 4, and you know what? I like that movie. I don't think it's bad. I think you should check it out. I think a lot of people might actually discover it on Netflix. I enjoyed it. It's not amazing, but I liked it. And then the documentary Murder to Mercy, the Centoya Brown story, rounds out the top 5. Also, looking at the rest of that top 10, I really hope that the kids aren't double binging Despicable Me and Django Unchained. I'm really hoping that the kids are watching Despicable Me, then they're going to bed, and mom and dad or whoever are staying home and watching Django Unchained, because that's not a good back-to-back double feature. I'm hoping that Netflix is not cycling through alphabetically, because the kids are going to have a lot of questions and a lot of no-no words in the very near future as they reintegrate into society. Now, there's another figure that I wanted to look at. Now, this is from a company called Parrot Analytics, and they do something kind of interesting, which is that they generate a list of what they call the most desired digital shows, digital series across platforms in the United States. And they have their own way of doing things, so these aren't hard numbers. These aren't hard viewership numbers like we get from television ratings. They basically take a metric, a weighted metric of downloads, streams, social media traffic, and they generate a list of what they call the most desired digital series. So these are original series produced by streaming platforms, and this is the list that they generated. Parrot Analytics is estimating, and this was for the week ending April 25th. Now, Clone Wars, as you can see here, is number 1. Obviously, with the finale of that show generating a lot of buzz. I've seen it all over my timeline the last day or so. That could very easily be at that top spot when we look at the most recent week. But for the week ending April 25th, Clone Wars is there at number 1, followed by Stranger Things over on Netflix, Tiger King on Netflix, The Mandalorian on Disney+. So Disney+, according to Parrot Analytics, has 2 of the top 5 most desired series, both of them Star Wars shows, and La Casa de Papel. DC Universe lands a show in the top 10 with Titans, and Hulu hits the list with Little Fires Everywhere. Again, these are not hard viewership numbers, and there's a lot of wiggle room and guesswork involved here. But I think any signpost that we have right now that says how people are choosing to spend their time is really instructional, or is at least interesting to see, because especially as a guy who loves numbers, and I say that I love the box office because it shows you what people are going to. You can see cold hard facts about where people are going and how they're choosing to spend their time. I'll take anything I can get at this point. I mean, I'm ready for things to get back up and running. Obviously, we have to wait until that's safe. So right now, is this a black and white goalpost or a signpost? I don't think it is, but I think it's at least interesting to see where people might be looking and how they might be spending their time. Now, there was a story that was unleashed on the internet today that seemed to indicate that we may see some movement soon in the never-ending quest to see when we will see New Mutants. As of right now, we still don't know. There was apparently a window for Amazon where it was open for Amazon pre-sales, so people were thinking that perhaps it's soon to be announced to be coming to VOD, that perhaps it is going to skip the theatrical release and will become an at-home rental, and that may very well happen. I do think it would be puzzling to me, or at least very unpredicted, not something I would predict, if Disney were to put out New Mutants, Disney Fox, or to put out New Mutants on something outside of the Hulu Disney Plus family. There's so much about corporate synergy and exclusives. I mean, Artemis Fowl is going to be a Disney Plus exclusive when it's released next month. It would surprise me if New Mutants showed up as a rental that you could rent on any platform. However, these are odd. This is an odd time, and this is an odd world we live in. But I did see a lot of people running with the news, and I got tweeted it a few times about New Mutants, saying like, "Oh, look at New Mutants! It looks like it's coming out." We don't know that yet. This could be an indication that it is. It could not be an indication that it is. As of right now, and as of this taping, there's no announcement about New Mutants. Now, what's going to happen, because I've said this, is that either tonight after the show drops or tomorrow when the show is still fresh, they will make an announcement, and I'll look like a dummy. But right now, today, as I'm sitting here recording this, no announcement, and I would be surprised to see it hitting multiple platforms like Amazon. You would think that Disney Fox would want to keep that a little bit more in the family, but you never know. So the big news that came out last week was this feud that has escalated now into an outright boycott between AMC Theaters, the biggest theater chain here in the United States, and Universal. Before I break down the numbers on that, in case you have not been keeping up with it, or in case you want to know how we got to this point, this is all over a movie called Trolls World Tour. This is, of course, the movie that I think we all looked at and said, this is going to revolutionize the way that business is done with the theatrical window here in the United States. Universal decided to release Trolls World Tour both in theaters, which there were few to none that were showing films, and on VOD simultaneously due to the theater shutdown during the COVID-19 crisis. Now, obviously, theater owners and exhibitors were not happy about this. The shortening theatrical window has already been a concern for many exhibitors and owners. Then the CEO of Universal, Jeff Shell, gave an interview to the Wall Street Journal, which is really what incited this. Jeff Shell said, quote, "The results for Trolls World Tour have exceeded our expectations and demonstrated the viability of PVOD, that's paid video on demand. As soon as theaters reopen, we expect to release movies on both formats." This is what caused AMC to respond strongly. They took this as a unilateral move from Universal to say that they are now going to release films simultaneously in theaters and on VOD, or maybe skip theaters entirely. So the CEO of AMC, Adam Aron, released his own statement saying, quote, "This radical change by Universal to the business model that currently exists between our two companies represents nothing but downside for us and is categorically unacceptable to AMC Entertainment. Therefore, effective immediately, AMC will no longer play any Universal movies in any of our theaters in the United States, Europe, or the Middle East. This policy affects any and all Universal movies per se, goes into effect today and as our theaters reopen, and is not some hollow or ill-considered threat. While Universal's unilateral pronouncements on this issue are unpalatable to us, as has always been the case, AMC is willing to sit down with Universal to discuss different windows, strategies, and economic models between your company and ours. However, in the absence of such discussions and an acceptable conclusion thereto, our decades of incredibly successful business activity together has sadly come to an end." So that's a pretty unequivocal statement from AMC. They, as of today, as of right now, and again, what's going to happen is this is going to settle tomorrow and I'm going to look like a big old dummy, but as I'm sitting here today, right now, AMC has issued a ban on any and all Universal films playing in any and all of their theaters. Now, Cineworld, the owner of Regal Theaters, issued a statement that a lot of people took as them joining in on this boycott or on this ban from AMC Theaters on Universal films. But they clarified later that they will only not exhibit films that they feel do not respect the theatrical window. So Regal kind of joining the cause here by saying, if a movie respects the theatrical window, then we will play it. If a movie does not respect the theatrical window, then we will not play it. So if Jurassic World decides that the next Jurassic World movie decides that they want to, have a full run in theaters and then do VOD and Blu-ray and everything, Regal has no problem with that. If Jurassic World decides that they want to release in theaters and on VOD at the same time, Regal would join AMC in not showing the film. So let's call this what this is. This is a negotiation tactic, and AMC owns up to it being a negotiation tactic in that statement, because here's what they say later in the statement. Incidentally, this policy is not aimed solely at Universal out of pique or to be punitive in any way. It also extends to any movie maker who unilaterally abandons current windowing practices absent good faith negotiations between us, so that they as distributor and we as exhibitor both benefit and neither are hurt from such changes. Currently, with the press comment today, Universal is the only studio contemplating a wholesale change to the status quo, hence this immediate communication in response. This is not necessarily about trolls. This is about the fact that AMC sees the fact that Universal had a successful launch with Trolls World Tour. A lot of people ask me about how the finances break down. When a theater plays a movie, let's say Universal, nothing had happened, and Universal puts Trolls World Tour in the theater, they are going to get back about 50 to 60% of the revenue from that, from theatrical exhibition. The theaters keep the rest. They get 50 to 60% back as a studio for a domestic release. Now, according to multiple reports, for a VOD release, the studio gets back 80% of the revenue. So right now, it's looking like, from their reports, that Trolls World Tour generated about $90 to $100 million of revenue on VOD so far. Instead of only keeping 50 to 60% of that money, if it had played in a theater, Universal gets 80% of that. So it's actually a better business deal for them. If they feel that they can have a comparable release on VOD versus theatrical exhibition, they keep more of the revenue. Why wouldn't they decide then to skip theaters or play alongside theaters and keep more of that money? AMC knows that. They know that that is an appealing proposition to a studio because that makes them more money. So this whole boycott is a negotiation tactic and a warning shot over the bow, because as you can see in that later part of the statement, they're saying this isn't just you, Universal. If you, Warner Brothers, or you, Paramount, or you, Disney, or you, whoever, decide to look sideways at putting a movie in our theaters again and on VOD, then we're going to boycott you too. They're trying to strong arm them. And, unilateral is also the word that you see. It wasn't necessarily about what they've done, because after all, Warner Brothers is skipping theaters altogether with Scoob. Disney is skipping theaters altogether with Artemis Fowl. What really has stuck in AMC's craw here is that Universal thinks that they could play it both ways. They think they could put a movie in theaters and put it on VOD, and AMC's having none of it. But here's where I think their strategy breaks down a little bit, and where I wanted to break down the numbers. Keep in mind that AMC is going to be exiting this crisis in hundreds of millions of dollars in debt. They put a debt offering up of $500 million. They are on the brink of bankruptcy, essentially, as a company. And they are also liable to be shut down, potentially, if there's another flare-up, if people are not taking social distancing measures seriously, if their system just doesn't work. They could be shut down again at any time with probably little to no warning. So the future is very unstable for AMC. Meanwhile, you have Universal, who has proven that they now have a potentially viable, maybe not for every movie, but for some movies, alternate distribution strategy. So I decided to go back and look and see how much leverage does AMC have and how much leverage does Universal have. As you can see here on the screen, here's Universal's market share of the box office for the last 5 years. You'll see that on the left, along with AMC's reported admission figures. You'll see that there on the right. Now, these numbers were obtained from The Numbers, a great box office reporting site, along with AMC's quarterly reports. That's where we got these admission figures. Now, assuming that AMC doesn't get a disproportionately larger or smaller share of the theatrical market, it looks like it's sold about $2 billion worth of tickets for Universal films. Now, keep in mind, AMC is the largest theater chain in the country, so it is likely that they may receive a disproportionately larger share of the business than any other theater chain. This is all things being equal. This is saying that if Universal had 22% of market share, then that 22% of the business went to AMC. It's likely that AMC, this number could be bigger. Now, this isn't a number that someone else is reporting. These are just my estimates from facts and figures. But still, $2 billion in ticket sales over 5 years. So we basically have a theater company, which is already in deep financial trouble, trying to strong arm a studio to the negotiating table to try to convince it to stick to a exhibition strategy that's worth potentially less money to them than staying with AMC and doing the movie theater model. I don't think that that's necessarily the strongest business decision or the strongest move. I think that AMC needs Universal way more than Universal needs AMC, because AMC desperately needs movies to show in their theaters, and not just any movies that are going to bring people to the theater to pay money. Universal has proven that with some of their films, people can stay home forever, and they can not only make the same amount of money, they could potentially make more money. So AMC trying to strong arm Universal to the table, to me, doesn't make a whole lot of sense as strategy. Now, I know that this is your business. You are the largest business in the world, or at least in the country, at doing this, and you've got to do whatever you can to protect that business. But I don't think trying to hold them hostage and hold hostage the other studios, when almost every one of the studios, Disney has Disney Plus, Warner Brothers is about to have HBO Max, Universal obviously has Comcast and that whole network. Almost every studio has access to a premium streaming service that they can put their stuff on easily within the network and keep more of the money. So I don't like the strategy. I don't think that it's going to bear fruit. I don't think that AMC has the kind of leverage that they want. And listen, I love the theatrical experience. I don't want people to stop going to the movies, and I don't want movies to stop being played on the big screen, because I think it's an experience that you can't replicate. But if I were AMC, I would spend way less of my time trying to halt the progress of technology, and I would spend way more of my time as you're down, as your operations are shut down, trying to figure out how to entice people to come back to your theaters. And that means lower ticket prices, in my opinion. I think that also means fewer advertisements and fewer trailers before a movie. I think that also means enhancing how people are monitoring theater goer behavior, because new ways of watching movies aren't the only reasons that people don't go to the movies anymore. They also don't go to the movies because they're too expensive. They don't want to sit through 30 minutes of ads, and they don't want to go and pay $18, $19 or more dollars for a ticket just to have somebody texting in the theater or talking through the whole movie and have nobody there enforcing the rules that are supposed to be there to keep the experience a pleasurable one for everyone else. So AMC, I guess I understand why they have to do this. I don't think it's good business strategy. And as I said, potentially $2 billion off of 5 years, in 5 years worth of ticket sales that you want to take off the table as a matter of principle, basically saying like, you need to talk to us first before you make any decisions. I'm sorry, AMC, but no, Universal doesn't need to do that. They've just proven that they don't need to do that. So you can stand in their way, or you can innovate and try to figure out how you can get Universal to come to you and say like, oh my God, you've really, look how many more people are coming to these things. You've really improved the experience. Of course we want to show our movies with you, because you're drawing more people there. You're giving people a reason to go to the movies and not stay at home where we can make more money. So that's my take on the whole AMC Universal thing. Of course, we will track it as this progresses. We are in a very odd situation here. I mean, this did not happen in a vacuum. A lot of this also had to do with where these studios have found themselves, and I'm usually very hard on studios. In this case, I think that Universal made the move that they needed to make. I think they found a successful branch of the business for them and a way for them to say like, hey, theater's not our only exhibition model. And I think AMC honestly wildly overreacted to the statements that were made in the Wall Street Journal. And then I think they're doubling down on a bad strategy where I don't think that they have much leverage. But we will see how it progresses, and we'll see how the box office progresses. I don't have a lot of charts for you today. It was more of a Dan rant / lecture. So I hope you don't mind that. I will be back next week with the numbers that we have. And I'm also prepping a very special edition in a couple of weeks where we might dig through the archive and find something from years past. Thank you so much for watching the show, and thank you for joining me here on my channel. I'm having so much fun so far. Don't forget to like and subscribe, hit that notification bell so you can see when the newest episodes are going to be available. We do charts every Monday. We are also doing new reviews and new video essays every week. I just released one about Jaws, why I love that movie and why I think it is my favorite movie and has been for many, many years. You can check that out now, as well as reviews. I did one for both Sonic the Hedgehog and Bad Boys for Life last week. I've got a couple on deck that I want to do this week, as well as any breaking news or any extra stuff that I want to bring you. I enjoy doing that, so be sure to do that. And also, I am over on Patreon, patreon.com/Dan Murrell. In addition to all this, my monthly movie club is over there. I'm also providing a feature-length commentary, as well as exclusive early looks at a lot of what happens here on the channel. So you can find me there, patreon.com/Dan Murrell. Thank you so much for joining me here today, and we'll see you next time.